Okay, so what I would like to do is first thank Gloria for being the originator of the meeting with authors. And then, of course, thank Doug, for the founder of the Global Chamber, for the outstanding opportunity that has been offered to us to listen to very unique and creative individuals as we have this morning. And this morning we have Lanie Denslow, Dwaine Canova, and Michael Seaver in front of us. And I just had a discussion with them a couple of days ago about their books and their personal experience and background. It just absolutely, this is a real treat. And I know that today's event and session is being recorded now. It will be part of the Global Chamber records. So I would like to start this morning with giving a very brief background to the individual you are meeting this morning. So the first author that is going to be discussing her book is Lanie Denslow. She is a specialist in cultural competence and business protocol and founded the Worldwide Intercultural Training and Resources Institute after observing cultures around the world. And as you know, when you travel around the world, its cultures are totally different. As an example, in Italy, when people go to funerals and die, the typical color of the dress is black, and in India is white. So there are quite different cultures around the world. She's an international speaker, and she has provided the speaking engagements in China, in England, in Germany, Russia, and South Africa. And she's the author of Worldwide, What to Know Before You Go, and the co-author of Working with America, and she will be addressing those books today. She's also served as the Director of International Affairs for the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, and as the President of Protocol and Diplomacy International. Finally, she is the graduate of Protocol School, Washington, holds a BS of Antioch University, and both an MBA and Master in International Business from Pepperdine University. Lanie, you're totally welcome today. If you could just start giving us a brief background of your book, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Professor. It's a privilege to be here with you and my co-presenters, and I'd be happy to talk about the book, Working with Americans. I'm even going to show it to you so you can see very clear. Working with Americans, how to build business relationships, profitable and productive business relationships, because we know that business really is all about people coming together. And we also know that if you don't understand each other, it's hard to collaborate and work effectively together. And I wrote this with my friend and co-author, another American, a woman who now lives in London, because we know that people can be puzzled by the American approach to doing business. I think that each of us would probably have a story to tell about hearing Americans described as aggressive, annoying, frustrating, puzzling, and other things. And we wrote this book to answer the question behind that is, why do they do that? Why do Americans do things the way they do? And this book is our attempt to answer that question, thinking that if we could answer it, then people would be able to understand each other and work more effectively together. So the professor asked each of us to talk a little bit about the contents of the book. So the contents of this book range from a look at the history of the United States, the physical country, the diversity of it, to things like styles of communication, superstitions, and how Americans form their friendships and do their networking. We look at corporations and planning and the role of the boss, as well as entrepreneurship and Americans' attitudes about time, for which we are famous. And the book is filled with stuff that we think is important, obviously, but interviews with people from around the world, Americans, people from other places, some quotes, even some cartoons to illustrate some of the points, because you should have some fun while you're reading a book, and cartoons sometimes add to that. We organized it in a way that the reader can start at any point. You don't have to start with chapter 1 and read to 18. You can start at 5 and go back to 1 and end up in 12, because we wanted the book to be useful for people. So if they have a question about why Americans like written documents and records and contracts as opposed to a handshake deal, they can find a chapter that talks about that. So that's, in a nutshell, the book, answering the question, why do they do that? Professor, back to you.
Oh, thank you, Lanie. And we'll have a lot more questions as we go forward in the program. And I would like now to address the next author, and an incredible individual, quite versed in the international environment globally, Dwaine Canova. He's a business builder and the author of several books with a very extensive global experience. He grew his largest organization from a napkin drawing, probably Starbucks, with created a company with about 3,000 employees in 5 countries. So all he needed is 10 napkins to get 30,000 employees in 50 countries. His current focus is developing exceptional executive teams. And that is a real challenge internationally and also domestically. So the title of his most recent book is Exceptional Executive Team. Dwaine earned a master's degree in business administration from the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, where he was a teaching fellow. Dwaine, your floor. Let us know about your book, why you wrote it, and what is in it. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here today. And I just have to mention this global thing. As a young student, young boy, I got very interested in world history. And my favorite character was Marco Polo.
Oh.
So you can imagine, as I get up and I start my business career, the opportunity to buy and grow businesses in other countries was like for me to become Marco Polo, if you will. So for me, it's just been a great opportunity to participate around the world. And I just love the things you described, Lanie, because explaining ourselves to others and really hearing other people explain themselves to us is a big key part of what makes life really fun. So excited for that. So the book, Exceptional Executive Teams, is really about this. The executive teams in organizations have more impact in the organization than any other team. That's the first point. The second point in the book is that most of them do not behave well together as teams. They really go off and do their own things. They're set for their own goals and they go focus on their own goals. And they don't understand the chaos and dysfunction that creates throughout the organization. So the purpose of the book is to explain the need to fix that. And the other parts of the book are about how to fix it, and also what the benefits are when you do fix it. And of course, the fixing process is around creating an executive leadership system, because we have a sales system, we have an accounting system. But if I go to an organization, any organization in the world, and ask them to clarify and describe their executive leadership system, they don't really have an acceptable answer. So the book helps them begin to put that in place. And of course, we built a set of web-based tools that help them do that. So there is the tech support in the process. And so with that thought in mind, that's how to fix the problem. And if they do, then the issue is that where they need to focus is they need to add to their thinking the building of an environment within which everyone in the organization can flourish, can thrive. And so they need to have a dimension of their activities that's around focus on the hearts, the minds, and the lives of all of the individuals. And I'm not asking that they give up the idea of setting goals and then pressing everyone to exceed goals. that's going to stay there, but they need to add this focus on building an environment. And that's what the executive leadership system helps them put in place. And so that's the theme and the outline of the book. And thank you for having me here today.
Oh, it's awesome. Really looking forward to investigating a bit more with the questions that all of us will have and the audience has. I would like now to, and thank you so much, Dwaine. And I would like now to introduce you an exceptional young man, Michael Seaver. I can say young because I am so much older. So Michael Seaver is an award-winning executive coach. He's a leadership consultant, an author, and a speaker. He has been providing his coaching services to clients in London, in Kuala Lumpur, in Singapore, New Zealand, Namibia, and across the United States. He is a 2010 graduate of the Thunderbird School of Global Management and a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, SHRM, and the Global Chamber. Michael has written articles for Authority Magazine, Medium, Thrive Global, Forbes Magazine, Financial Executive International, Phoenix Business Journal, and many more. It is a true pleasure, Michael, to welcome to this morning Authors Conversation with Authors meeting. The title of your book is I Know, and a subset is a practical guide for awakening to what's within and finding work-life integration. That is one of the most important elements in our lives. Michael, welcome. Tell us about your book.
Thank you, Professor Ancis, and Dwaine, Lanie, thank you so much for your time today as well. You know, I really thought about this book in terms of it being a culmination of my life's work thus far. And Professor Ancis just referenced that I'm a bit younger maybe than most who have written books, but for me, I've had a lot of really interesting experiences in 25 years of leadership. So this book tells pretty raw pieces of my story, lots of psychology research. It brings forth a lot of client stories that I've had from around the world. And it even includes a little bit of predictions maybe for what I think the world is about to become. And the way that I structured the book is basically in 3 phases built upon the William Bridges model of transition. So the first 3 chapters about how do we end and let go of an old version of ourselves. The second 3 chapters are a little bit more of a dive into an emotional neutral zone where we uncover our personal mission, uncover our personal brand, understand what our core values are, those things that really make us unique and different in the marketplace. And then the third phase of the book is really about implementing. How do we move to that point of actually becoming a great coach or becoming a great leader inside of our respective organizations? And so it's a really linear process from beginning to end to help people go from a place of being disengaged to being at a point of really being engaged. And when I thought about the book, I really wanted it over a period of time to help people get back to the basics of really feeling and believing that the answers to all of life's really challenging questions are actually already inside themselves. And I think we in society, we tend to look to external sources for some sort of an answer, but I really wanted people to feel empowered to transition to believing that life's answers could actually come from themselves. And so Earth is in this really interesting transition right now. We're seeing so many things happen across the globe that haven't happened in hundreds and hundreds of years. And as we make this transition from very hierarchical, very centralized, very, I would say like this kind of hierarchical centralized approach, we're moving away to a much more decentralized and a much more holocratic approach to life. And when we do this, we can always get to this place of understanding that when we take advice or counsel or something from someone else, that's their life to live. We can take that as being some sort of an inspiration, but it's not necessarily ours to emulate. So I really wanted people to come back to the basics of saying there's these external pieces of information that we can gather and use to inform us in our decisions of becoming our most authentic version of ourselves, but we really know all the answers inside of ourselves. Now, the second thing that the book was really attempting to do was help people see that there are fundamental similarities across all people, regardless of where you're at on Earth. And so I really wanted people to come back to the basics that we are more similar. And there are actually 10 principles by which all people are the same. Of course, across cultures, of course, across different socioeconomic status or age groups, there are minor differences, but at the core, humans are far more similar. And the third thing that you'll get throughout this entire book is really about how do we bring the human soul and employee life experiences into the workplace, right? So I create this idea around the staff psychologist and how do we allow for more emotional conversation inside of a workplace. And so this entire book is about helping people shed old mindsets and move into a place of just trusting their intuition to know that they know the path forward. So thank you, Professor.
Oh, wow. I had a conversation with Michael yesterday regarding his book, and I'm totally authentically impressed by the contents of it. It's basically, and as we proceed with today's presentation, all of us will learn a lot more about Lanie's book and Michael and Dwayne's book. I want you to know that the format that you have right now for all of you who are here, Michael, Dwayne, Gloria, Alex, and Lanie, that this particular screen in Zoom is showing only the us here. However, if you go to the chat, you'll find out there are 17 current listeners to the program. So we have very nice audience today. So I invite the people in the audience, as they are listening to the authors, to actually post their questions in the chat room, so that we will then address those questions in order for, depending on what authors is being inquired, and we'll move forward. I personally have a question that I would like to ask each one of you, and I would like to start with you, Dwayne. And it's a question that actually Lanie, when we talked about the other day, suggested is an excellent question, is why did you write the book? You know, there's always a reason for which people write.
It's a great question. Quite a few years ago, we decided that we wanted to build a private equity company. And we had already had many years of working operationally, and we're very good with computers. That's a strong background for me. We had processes geniuses, and then I taught reporting, and accounting stuff. So if you think of operations is really about processes. It's about using technology, and it's about reporting and paying attention. And we had that in place. So all of those systems were very much set. But I thought, as we have a portfolio of 50 companies in our private equity company, we need to have the same kind of discipline and structure for the executive leadership teams. So it's been a path of a few years of putting these pieces together, understanding what the tools should be. And then over the past few years, we've put those tools into a web-based model so that people can have it on their phone and on their laptop, and that we can get the executive teams participating really well as executive teams with the hearts, minds, and lives of everyone in their organization forefront in their process. So building that, and so now what we've done is, in the process, I built a series of books that we use to train executive coaches on how to participate with our system. And this book is really to explain what we're expecting to accomplish and what we're in the participation of developing worldwide, which is we want to go around the world and create exceptional executive teams. And so that's really why the book is written, is to introduce it, get the concept out there, and let folks know that we have a lot of information and a lot of technology support behind it to help them in the process.
That's great, Dwayne. Just a follow-up question before I go to Michael. In your experience, and thank you for explaining the reasoning behind the creation of the book. In your experience, what happens when exceptional leaders don't show up?
Well, what happens is, what kind of causes the problem is they get really focused on the details of setting goals and pressing everyone to accomplishing goals. And they really fail to build in place a structure and a focus. And so they get off and they create this siloing problem. They create this bickering and conflict between the parts. And so what we want to do is have it so the parts work incredibly well together. In order to do that, we have to begin with the executive team.
It sounds like an incredible guidance to not only efficiency, but improve communication in companies, yes?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Michael, I'm so fascinated by your book because since I was 31, my basic, incredible, although being a scientist and being a businessman with my consulting company, my challenge, my interest in life has always been how does the mind of the human species work? And so when you start talking about letting go of the past, really looking at what reality is in the present, and then transitioning to the future, getting out of your comfort zone, to me is an incredible, incredible insight in human nature. What motivated you to write this book, Michael?
I was very reluctant to actually do this, Professor. I'm a really significant introvert. I love to be alone. I love to not say anything to everybody or anybody. So, as time passed, I was given a number of nudges from the universe, from clients and from other people in my life that I needed to write a book and tell my story and some of my client stories. And for years, I was quite reluctant to do so. But in May of 2019, I did something I hadn't done before, which was I saw a psychic, and she was very clear that I needed to publish the book by September 30th, but she didn't say by which date, by which year, she didn't say. And so I kind of noodled on it for about a year past the September 30th date. And then COVID started March of 2020. And I reached out to my writing coach and I said, hey, do you have room or flexibility or availability to be able to help me now that we have this time? I would really like to be able to work on a book. And so she was able to help me in that context. So I was reluctant to do it. I've been given a number of signs to do it. The psychic said that I should do it. And then the writing coach just randomly happened to be available. So then I worked last summer to work through this and do it. So really what it came down to was that all of these stars kind of aligned, but I also really wanted to be able to tell my story of the challenges and hardship that I had gone through in some younger years, because I believe strongly that we should all be the person we needed when we were younger. And I just wanted the book to be able to do that. So part of the book for me was emotional healing. Part of it was storytelling to be able to help others heal in the way that's important for them. But the other part of it is just like, there's this new version of Earth coming. How do we prepare people for it? Right. So in order to make all of that stuff happen, we have to end and let go of some emotion inside of ourselves. Let there be some room for a couple of months to experiment and try, and then welcome 6-7 months down the road, welcome something new into our lives. And so hopefully the book gives people a chance to do that for themselves.
That is just incredible, Michael. I just am curious, and maybe you'd like to share that with us without giving away the book, of course. But if you can share with us, it is clear, based on my experience of training student participants in my life, that there is a common thread in our lives. And one of the common threads is the fact that we live our lives as if the past were true. The truth is the past is really our perception. So the letting go of the past, which you address in the book, is a fundamental element that when you go to your therapist, you spend 3 years and you still leave the therapist with the same thoughts you had before. So how do you in your book guide the individual on in your groups? Do you allow the individual to really look and let go of the past or modify their perception, which is the same?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So we just recently launched something called the You and I Know Circle, right? Which is like a book club, but also an executive roundtable to help people kind of do this together, right? Peer-to-peer accountability. But really the way that I tried to explain it as the book is that the human mind or the subconscious is basically like a computer. And so according to Dr. Bruce Lipton, from birth until age 6, the human brain is in the theta brainwave state. So everything that we see around us as our parents are acculturating us into our specific place, we are basically then learning cultures, norms, and mores. Now, after age 6, the brain moves into something called the beta brainwave state, and we unknowingly, unconsciously repeat all of those exact same behaviors for the rest of our life. And most of the time, those are not there to actually serve us, they're actually detrimental. So the very first step is to make sure that people are aware of what were they taught from birth to age 6, and how is it serving or not serving them today, so they can make a conscious choice about what perception of their past to let go. So bring to light how they were formed into that specific mindset, and then really call out, does this mindset or this perception, does it serve you? Does it align you with your life's mission and your core values, or does it not?
Michael, the identification with the call ineffective behaviors is one of the foundation in the world of achieving exceptional teaming, as Dwane was pointing out. It is incredible. It is, the thing that is not known, which you brought out, is how the early stages of development in human life are so relevant and important because they freeze up literally your future behaviors. And we just bought a puppy with my wife, and we are going to be delivering Saturday. So we're reading a book, Everything to Know About Puppies. And it's really interesting because in dogs, the first 8 weeks plus 8 weeks, 16 weeks, same thing. They say behaviors are learned, they are stored in their belief system, and they're then never forgotten, but they're acted upon, which is exactly what you're saying about human nature. So thank you for bringing that up, Michael. It's just, and we'll have many more questions. Lanie, I'm fascinated by, thank you again, Michael. Lanie, I'm fascinated, being Italian and having come to this country and still being adjusting. When I go to Europe, my family looks at me and say, oh, here's the American coming.
Right.
The US, oh, here is the Italian coming. So I basically am a man of no country right now. Talk to us about why did you write this book, which is so vital in the field of understanding foreign cultures?
I have to just laugh sort of with a joyful feeling listening to Michael and to Dwane and to you now. And I've been thinking about why we wrote the book, Allison and I, and I think it represents that thread of a human need. And although we would never have articulated it this way, I think we wrote the book about working with Americans because we wanted people to like Americans. Maybe we were reflecting our own wish, that very human, essential thing from when we are born, that we wanted to be liked. But I can't say that I ever thought about it quite that directly till I was thinking about this conversation today and then listening to Michael talk right now. But we wrote the book because we recognized that there was a disconnect, that people talked about Americans as cold and aggressive and only interested in business. And if you talk to Americans, they said, oh, we're friendly and we're efficient and we like to get things done. So we wanted to, as I think I said before, answer the question, why do they do that? Why are they that way? But with the goal being that if people had some mutual understanding, in this case, had a different understanding of Americans, that they could work more effectively together. And we recognize that sometimes it's just the smallest thing that can establish that disconnect, that earliest experience. And I was reminded of that in an interview with a young woman who's an attorney based here in San Francisco, who said, you need to tell everybody that hi, how are you is not really a question, that it's a greeting. And Michael, you're smiling and laughing. I suspect you've seen this experience where an American comes in, he sees somebody he's met before but doesn't know well and says, oh, hi, how are you? And the person who might be from another part, one of your colleagues from Italy, starts to answer, oh, I'm fine, or I'm not fine, whatever. But meanwhile, the Americans moved on and they're now asked them another question. So the person who's trying to answer, how am I, feels disrespected and insulted, and the Americans oblivious because they think it's a greeting. And in those small disconnects, relationships and business either grows or dies. And our goal was, in a way, to eliminate especially those small disconnects that can be have such a strong impact. So we just wanted to be liked, and we wrote a book so people would like us better. Don't quote me, any of you people on this call, about that.
Lanie, you just, you're incredible. You know why? When you explained this, how are you? That was one of the most challenging questions or environments that I ever faced when I came to this country. People say, how are you? And they turn around, they walk away before you're telling how you are. And I said, my God, they don't care about me. But the thing is,
Yeah.
the thing that I noticed is you got to write a new book for doctors and dentists. When you go to the doctor, what is the first question they do? When you go in, they say, how are you? Well, I thought the other day I went to see a doctor with my wife, and I say, why are you asking the question? If we're here, obviously we are not well. It was an eye visit, right?
Oh my goodness.
Very strange about this culture. I'm so glad you brought it about because it's totally fascinating. Very, very fascinating. Thank you again, Lanie. Well, I'll get back to you because I would love to have 8 hours with you each to really give a proper exposure to this here. So let me go to you, Dwaine. Typically, when people write books or when all of us write books, there is a fundamental motivators behind it, and we investigated that. But what do you think, if you can transport yourself a moment in the point of view of the reader of your book, being the reader of your book, what do you think the benefits would be for the reader after reading your book?
First of all, with the book, I want to let them know that there is empathy and respect for the fact that leading and managing an organization is incredibly difficult. The second part is around this issue, and I'd love to give you an anecdote, and I'll illustrate it. I've done this many times, but speaking to a group of people, and just use the number 100 in your mind. So speaking to 100 of people who would be the audience, C-level people. I meet with them, we talk, I let them know that we're talking about exceptional executive teams, and they have an interest because they are executive teams, and they may not be there as a team. But the first question I ask is, look, I'd like to get to know you a little bit, so I'm going to hold up a book. If you've read the book, please let me know. So I hold up a book, and I'll get 80 or 90 hands, another book, 80 or 90 hands. So I can hold up 4, 5, 6 leadership books that are all popular and well-known, and I'll get 80 or 90 hands. I say, thank you very much. Now, please share with us just a single item that you liked in one of these books or another popular book. Just share an item that you liked and tell us why you liked it in one sentence. So I get 10 to 15 of those. And what happens is the group now comes together knowing that there are other people here who feel as I do, think as I do, and so it connects the group. Then I ask this question, okay, now for these things that you have liked, please explain to us as briefly as you can how you implemented them in your company and what was the impact. I get no answers. So one of the things for having a system and a structure is so that we have all this marvelous teaching. We have this marvelous teaching from Lanie. We have this marvelous teaching from Michael. People scan, read through, fiddle with the books, have a conversation and so forth, but they never get the discipline and structure of putting it in place so that it becomes a part of their repeatable abilities so that they can begin to scale. So we have this magnificent wealth of information. So we've not focused on creating information about leadership. We've focused on helping provide a system and a structure within which people will apply what they're already at least aware of.
That's fascinating, Dwaine. Thank you for the explanation. You know, when I was doing science, one of my degrees is physics, and I realized this, that I'm not, as a theoretical physicist, I'm not very good. I comprehend, I understand, but I don't create new paradigms. But when it gets down to applied physics, then that's where I'm excellent, because it's really the application of principles that allows us to move forward in what is called improvement in our science, in our personal behavior, and everything else. So you pointed it out. I'm so glad that your book and your system is addressing that fact that the book is about moving forward and creating exceptional teams, not just reading about it and then putting back the book in your library. That's awesome. Same with you, Michael. The question is, if you were a reader reading your book, especially in the topic that you are addressing in the book, which is intimate, which is internal, very often spiritual in the realization of what the content is, many would get to the point of what I call obstacle resistance, and subconsciously they are giving the message, don't read forward because you're not ready for it. So how do you assist people to really achieve the full benefits of the learning of the materials in your book, which sound absolutely incredible? Should be a must for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think what it comes down to is this idea of how do we intentionally, proactively manufacture small wins, right? Build little bits of momentum through each step of the process to make sure that people feel just a little bit successful. And I really support what Dwaine just said. So I want everybody to really hear what he said, is that goals and things like that are great, but habits and systems trump everything else, right? They just do. So it's really important. So what I try to do with my clients is create habits and systems that manufacture small wins that create a psychological safety that allow for movement to the next step, right? And that's really what it's about. And so what I'm looking at in this book is for any person who feels disengaged, maybe they're a little bit unhappy in life, maybe they feel unappreciated by a colleague or a family member, maybe they feel like they're not living up to their potential, or they don't have work-life balance. You know, maybe they're in this place of desiring to be 100% control in their time. And this book's processes are really designed to take them from that place of disengagement and uncertainty to the point of engagement and clarity, right? That's what I hope to have happen after they go through the 9 different steps within the respective processes. So what I'm trying to do is help people move from that place of not being sure to that point of really being sure. And what they're going to take away from the text is really distinct clarity about who their most authentic self is, or they're in one sentence going to be able to say what their life's mission is, right? That's what the book does. It helps them write a personal mission. But it also, in a very distinct, authentic way, helps them uncover their version of joy, their version of happiness, right? Their version of clarity. It also gives them a lot of stuff with regards to communication style, motivators, core values, their strengths. They come up with a unique value proposition in chapter number 4. So the book is really designed to come back to the basics of who were they before they were acculturated to believe a certain thing, right? And then we figure out how do we shed the acculturation and then find a way to just live your authentic life. And to your point, Professor, it really is about small habits and wins. And so as a coach, I intentionally manufacture experiences that create some sort of a learning for the person, maybe even if sometimes I know that they're spiritually or psychologically not ready for it, because I want them to have that aha moment that makes it safe for them to take the next step.
It's absolutely awesome. Thank you, Michael. Wow. I can't imagine the positive difference that your book is making in many lives. Thank you. Really, thank you. From all those who are not giving you thanks. Todd Cornell wrote a couple of comments, very brilliant comments and acknowledgements. And he was talking about the importance of understanding foreign cultures. If I were a foreigner reading your book, what do you think would be the benefit that I receive? And you're right. By the way, being an Italian European, typically what you see in Europe is what is called the ugly American. No disrespect to anyone. I lived here for 50 years now and I'm an American. But the ugly American is a common image that is ingrained in many of the foreign cultures. So how can your book actually modify that incorrect picture of Americans who are incredible in their empathy, incredible in their heart, and they are exceptional as individuals, as nature?
So I'm going to ask you if you can hold the question, because I don't know if you can hear now, but they're testing the fire alarms.
Oh,
so
I thought it was my question.
I am going to ask if I could hold off for a couple minutes and let you continue the conversation with Dwaine and Michael for a minute.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, in life, Michael, you know this, in life there are resistances that come, like you have a plan and then life come and test you. So these are the kind of tests, right? And Lanie, let us know, pop in whenever you come back out, so we can back to it. Dwaine, going back to you, if there is one element in your book, and I don't mean to trivialize that by asking my question, but if there is an element in your book that you like people to keep by leaving the reading of your book away, what would that be? The one element that you don't want them to miss?
The process of becoming exceptional requires structure, it requires discipline, and it requires guidance. And so in my mind, I match incredibly well with what Michael has shared. And we do this in a way that there are ongoing daily, hourly engagement with successes that help people then continue in a process of recognizing that they are making progress. And the progress itself becomes its own motivator, as well as having the engagement with others in the process. Because everyone wants to be better. Rarely do people get the structure or the guidance to get into a process, providing the structure and discipline and guidance within which that can get accomplished. And so it's fascinating to me with the discussions today, because with Lanie, one of the things that I did is I was going to do anything international. I hired people to travel with me who were experts in the area to train me and develop me. And I certainly did my fair share of being the ugly American, but it was just because I wasn't paying attention to the guidance I was getting. And once you get into that process and you really become sensitive, it just transforms the entire experience. So I've never been anywhere that I didn't want to return to. I've never been anywhere that I always hated to leave. And I remember specific individuals and specific incidents that are just magnificent memories that are just terrific to have.
Thank you, Dwaine. I have to share an event that happened in international culture, and by that, the alarm should be off so Lanie can come back. It was, I felt, here I am about 35, 37 years old. I'm a senior advisor and consultant to Philips in Holland, one of the largest companies in the world. And it's my first visit with Dr. Resma, who is the chairman of Philips. So my first question I thought to make him feel better, right? I'm there with him in a room and I say, "Können Sie Deutsch zu sprechen?" Which means, "Can you speak German?" He looks at me back with a very cold eye. They say, "In Holland, we speak Dutch. We do not speak German." I will never forget that in my entire life. And just that was one of the blunders that I committed. The second one with the president of Sony Corporation in Japan when I was visiting. I admire his samurai statues in his office. There was his family loom. Not realizing that the custom in Japan is the art of gifting, which means somebody compliments something somewhere, you give it to them as a gift. So I lost Sony as a client, but I still have the samurai in my office in front of me, remind me of what I should not say internationally. Lanie, can you speak about the question I asked before?
I can't tell you how quiet it seems here right now.
Your environment has become a culture.
Yes.
So when somebody reads your book, what would be the one or two elements that you would like them to leave with that are so relevant and important to change that foreign, ugly American stereotype that is quite common in many countries?
I'd say one thing I'd like is for people to come away with the idea that there is a reason for the behavior they see that may puzzle them. And that would be not just about Americans, but any place we go, as we have talked, as including the examples you just gave. There are things that are appropriate in every environment that people do that may surprise us, but there's a reason. And to be curious about what the reason is that people are behaving in a certain way. And if I was going to advise you, if you were picking up the book and you only had time to read one chapter, I would advise people to read chapter 5, Do It Now, which is all about attitudes about time, the different perspective of time, and where this American do it now, always focused on what time is, comes from. Because I think wherever you are, that is so fundamental to how people conduct their lives, do their business. And it's certainly part of the American story of those Americans always rushing around. So that would be the one chapter, but the overarching thing is there's a reason that people behave the way they do. This is our explanation for Americans, and look for it wherever you are.
Oh, that's totally fascinating. One of the things that has been most surprising, I'd like to address that to all of you and see your take within the environment we are in your book, is this. In America, you get together with foreigners at the dinner table or lunch, right? After about 30 minutes of being at lunch at the table with people you don't know, you discuss the business of about 30, 40, 50, $100 million investments. In Europe, they're interesting in Italy, in the Latin countries, in France, in Mexico, in Spain, in South America. Before to even get to discussing the opportunity of working together, collaborating, or doing business together, it takes you about 2 or 3 months. Not only lunch, you got to meet their family, you got to meet their coworker, you become a friend before you can collaborate. Can you address that, Michael? Because I'm sure that in your international addresses, then I'll have Lanie feedback and then Dwaine.
Sure. Yeah. And thank you for asking, Professor. I think what I tried to do in my book is kind of come back to the basics and really help people know themselves incredibly well. So they show up in an emotionally intelligent way, or in an empathetic way, or with a high level of self-awareness or capacity to be aware of others' journeys to today, and just offer them the benefit of the doubt, right? And understand that everybody is going through something that we have no idea about. And so when you use the systems that Dwaine talks about, that really does help to get back to the basics of creating more opportunities to open those lines of dialogue. And Lanie's given lots of good insights already in her conversation about ways that we can be more empathetic or aware of why someone's doing what they're doing. Those things matter immensely. And so the key thing about my book is that I really want people to focus in on chapter 4, just like Lanie talked about chapter 5 for herself, is because chapter 4 talks about those commonalities that exist across all people, regardless of generation or place on earth, is that we all desire in some way, even if we don't realize it consciously, is that we all desire to be the person we needed when we were younger, right? We have those challenges in our younger years, right around age 30, we overcome them somehow. And in the highest and best use of our life later on is to help others overcome that same challenge for themselves. And when we do that, all ethnic boundaries just disappear, right? Because we very quickly find uncommon commonalities in relationships and friendships, and long-term connection blossom from there pretty organically.
That's awesome. Thank you, Michael, so much for your insight. Dwaine, similar environment question, then I'll get to Lanie. Is Dwaine, when you look globally, you find out that cultures change, country to country, right? But behaviors don't. The promoter, analyzer, controller, and supporter are the same in each behavioral quadrant. So what's really interesting, when you're looking at creating exceptional teams cross boundaries, how do you overcome the issue of different cultures?
Okay, part of the issue is that in creating a system, a structure. So imagine if we had a CRM system for the sales team. The company puts their information in the system. The same thing with our system. You put your culture, your style, your concepts, your principles, your terminology, into the system and you use it your way. The system just provides a structure within which you do that, and then helps provide guidance to have the discipline of doing repeatable kinds of things. And it helps you communicate more effectively. And we have you communicating at the executive level, at the thinking level, not the doing level. And so what happens is we get to places of thoughts, we get attitudes, we get motives. And as a team, I now know how you think. I know what the big issues are that you're thinking about. And by getting into that process, all of that is done within culture. And so having a sensitivity to that probably comes from the fact that I grew up 10 miles from the Mexican border in a farming rural area. So as a young boy working in the fields with the other migrant farm workers, we really had a chance to get to know one another. And the fact that I didn't know some of the words, by the way, they did teach me all the bad words. I've got all those down. A big part of my vocabulary. I'm quite an expert on that for offline. But I really appreciated the fact that people were different. And then in the community, we had people from different countries who came there at different times to work in the fields with us. And so I think you get to the place of fully appreciating that living and working with people changes you dramatically in terms of appreciating the quality of their thinking, the quality of their attitudes, the quality of their motives, the sense that they do care. And so once you in your spirit begin to connect with them in their spirits along those lines, the world is a different place. It's just
That's awesome.
Place.
Dwaine, thank you so much. That's awesome. Is such. Thank you for answering the question, because your system is a output system based on input. So you actually define your variables at the beginning. Therefore, it's brilliant, totally brilliant. I suggest anyone to really buy anybody's book. Actually, I will go, like Gloria Petersen said, the moment that this is done, I'm going to go and buy your books because I can learn so much from you. Lanie, before I close out, I want to give the floor to Lanie, but I want to thank again Gloria Petersen for being the candle that lit the other candles and allow us to be at this exchange of brilliant individual with such different experiences around the world. Thank you, Gloria, for your contribution to all of us. Thank you, Doug, for allowing us to be in this platform. And thank to all those who attended today that I've seen about 17 people plus us into it. And thank you for your question that drove my question to you guys. And Lanie, I was asked for you to get the floor and discuss and present a few minutes what's going to happen in the next meeting of the Conversation with Authors.
Thank you, Professor. I want to take 1 minute first to answer part of your question from a minute ago of why does it take 30 minutes or 3 months to be able to start doing business together? And I think one of the subtle things is how we view other people, relationships. Americans have an idea, I think, that if we meet you and we think you're generally okay, we believe right away that you might be worth doing business with. 30 minutes of lunch maybe confirms that. We sort of see the glass is almost full and we figure out we'll get to know you better while we work together. Other parts of the world are a little more cautious, let's say, and want to take the time to really discover if they feel comfortable with you, not just jump in. It's a little matter of timing and the first attitude of, we believe you're good until you prove to us you're not, as opposed to we want to check you out before we move forward. So that would be my answer to why fewer dinners lead to business faster. But
thank you, Lanie. I got fat with dinners.
I kind of like the dinners, so that's different. But thank you all, Michael, Dwaine, Professor, Gloria, Doug, for making this opportunity available for all of us. It's been terrific to be with you and a little bit life-changing, actually. Now, I expect that we'll have the same kind of exciting results next week when we shift our focus from leadership to finance. And next week, it's financial success. And we have two outstanding speakers, Junko Horvath, whose book is Women in Financial Transition. And she is a certified financial transitionist and the CEO of Fujiyama Wealth Management. And she'll be joined by Dale Walters, who's a CPA, Senior Tax Manager and Director of U.S. Canada Tax Service for Beach Fleischman. And he's written a series of books about cross-border transactions. And he has an excellent guide, The Border Guide to Living, Working, and Investing Across Borders, U.S. and Canada, that is an easy read for a non-finance person, in addition to a series of books that delve more deeply into the financial implications. So everybody, please do join us next week, Wednesday at 9 o'clock, California and Arizona time. And I hope we will be joined by Gloria Petersen again, and maybe even Dwane and Michael and the professor. So
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all, and thank you, Professor.
Oh, thank you, Lanie, and thank you to everyone here. I want to also thank Cesar, who is the technologies behind the ability of us to be here. Without him, we would just be talking mute. Well, I want to thank everyone. It's 10 o'clock. We respected the time. We started at 9. We ended at 10 o'clock, which is very important in America and in many countries. And so thank you again for everyone. I'm going to be signing off, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you all. Thank you all
Everybody,
very
thank
much.
you.